Here we go. Welcome everybody to the October First Friday e-call with K-State Research and Extension. The purpose of this call has always been to increase the local community's knowledge of the experts, the education, and the economic resources that are available to help their businesses and the communities who love them. As always, the call is being recorded, and I'll put a link into the website into the chat in a moment. And a copy of Christy's presentation deck. It'll probably be Monday or Tuesday before it's posted this week, but it will be posted. I would very much like to know if and why this call matters to you, and Christy will be pleased to hear the responses too. At the end of the call, there's going to be a survey. Please just take 3 minutes and think about it while you're in the call. Did you learn something today that you can use immediately? And then think about how many people will you forward this information to? The best messengers are the people we know and trust, and you are that for somebody else. What did you learn today that was most helpful to you? And that's probably that's an open-ended question that will probably be most interesting to Christy. So with no further ado, oh, and also we really do kind of like to create a community. If you would be willing, putting your into the chat what community you represent and what your role is there, and we'd love to know about you. So without further ado, today's speaker is Christy Davis, the Director of Kansas USDA Rural Development. And Christy's going to talk about how USDA Rural Development can help your community. Thank you, Christy.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you, Nancy, for the invitation, and shout out to K-State. I'm a K-State alum as well. I know a lot of you folks on the call, and I know that a lot of you probably know a lot about our programs already, but I want to just share a brief overview of what we do and mainly leave plenty of time for Q&A. I know there's a couple people who have specific projects that they want to share or visit about, and we're open to that. I want to keep it pretty informal. For those of you who don't know me, Christy Davis, I'm a fifth generation Kansan. I've worked in every county in the state. I live in Chase County, and specifically in Cottonwood Falls, population 900. I'm biased, but it's the most beautiful place on the planet. I work out of Topeka during the week, but I travel a lot all over the state. But I'm also involved in a lot of nationwide activities. I'm working on a couple of task forces that are dealing with particular issues in rural America. Pretty excited to be doing that work. I am a presidential appointee. Every state has a presidential appointee for FSA, Farm Services, on the production ag side, and that is Dennis McKinney. I am the presidential appointee in Kansas for rural development. So honored to be in that position. I've been in my role for about 2 years, but I have a lot of experience working in rural communities, lots of different capacities, certainly mostly outside of programs that are run by rural development. So that's just a little bit about me. I have a PowerPoint. I will tell you, I'm not a huge PowerPoint fan. So I'm going to use the PowerPoint to just talk a little bit about our structure and give some background. But I really want to take the opportunity to share kind of an update of where we are as far as USDA rural development in Kansas, and then again, answer your questions and address specific projects that you have in mind. So I am going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint with you. I think. All right. Can you all see the
Looking good.
PowerPoint? All right. So if many folks who've worked with USDA, when they think about USDA, they think about production agriculture, right? If you're a farmer, you've probably spent a lot of time working with FSA, which is Farm Services. You all probably know this, but only about 2% of the population of rural America is engaged in production agriculture, which means 98% of the folks in rural America are doing something else. Farm Services helps folks generally with production ag, and that includes urban ag though as well. We deal with mostly with projects that aren't related to production agriculture, although we do have some programs that relate to ag-related business. So we often work with production ag folks. But what I like to say is that we deal with the other 98% of rural America that's not engaged in production agriculture. The interesting fact about that is that while we do that, we're only 1% of the Farm Bill. So we've been hearing a lot about the Farm Bill in the news. If you follow policy in Washington, you know that the Farm Bill expired at the end of September. We are 1% of that. The good news is though, at USDA Rural Development, we've had a lot of funding from the relief programs through bipartisan infrastructure legislation, ARPA, and also IRA, so Inflation Reduction Act. So we have had some funding through those programs that continues. But historically, we've been a very small piece of the ag funding pie. With that small amount of money, we do a lot of work. Historically in Kansas, until about 10 years ago-ish, we in Kansas had a field operation of about 130 folks. Right now, we have about 30. This says we have 33. That's probably about right. It fluctuates, and we have been able to add some folks back. We are in the process of rebuilding our field operation because it is a priority of the current administration. We have Basil Gooden, who is the current Undersecretary for Rural Development, is very interested in the field. He comes from the field. He was an ag secretary at the state level, but he also was a state director like me, and understands the importance of the field. For those of you who are familiar with other parts of USDA, FPAC, which is the NRCS, so the Conservation Service, and FSA, Farm Services, have a total ground operation in Kansas of about 800. Okay, so that's 800 people serving mostly production ag. We have about 30 people right now on the ground in the field serving other, rural programs, and that includes everything from healthcare to housing, etc. Historically, we had more regional offices. Right now, our state office is in Topeka. We also have regional offices in Iola, Newton, and Hayes. Historically, we had a presence in Southwest Kansas, among other places too. We had a Manhattan office. There were many, many offices throughout the state. If you work with FSA and NRCS, they have a presence in nearly all of the 105 counties. When you see the USDA service centers, you are seeing generally offices that house NRCS and FSA, but in Topeka, Iola, Newton, and Hayes, we also have staff. We try to have staff in each of those offices that represents all of our programs. That has been a challenge though, as our field operation shrank over the years. During the last administration, there was no Undersecretary for Rural Development appointed. And so we are actually, this current administration, we've spent a lot of time rebuilding that structure and working toward building a field. I always say, because I live in, Cottonwood Falls, right? I live in a small town. If it doesn't happen in person, it doesn't happen in rural America, and particularly in rural Kansas. It's really important for us to show up and be there. And so it's important that we continue to rebuild that field operation. We have 3 areas of programming. We have housing programs. In our offices in Kansas, we manage single-family housing programs. So we offer funding for home repair and rehabilitation, new construction. And then we also have, as an agency, a multifamily housing program that provides not only housing. I mean, if you're in a rural community in Kansas, you probably have a USDA funded multifamily housing project in your community. Most of those were built when we did direct financing on those projects in the late 1970s and early 1980s. So we're not building a lot of new ones. And then we also have rental assistance then. So a lot of the folks who live in those places receive rental assistance. That rental assistance often gets paid directly to, the housing authority or whoever operates the housing project. Then we have community programs. I would say housing programs, as far as volume, the number of projects that we do year to year, lots and lots and lots of housing projects, although they're smaller dollar amounts than with our other programs. Community programs, we fund all kinds of projects. Oftentimes it might be an ambulance or a fire truck, emergency management services, healthcare, community buildings. And then we also have through community programs, a program called WEP, which is water and environmental programs. We fund water projects, wastewater treatment, those sorts of things. We also have utilities service, and we work indirectly with RUS, Rural Utility Service. We don't have a lot of folks in the state. We have a general field representative who works in the state on those programs, and those programs do distance learning and telemedicine, rural broadband, and they have had a lot of funding through the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure legislation. Business and cooperative programs. We have lots of programs. The one right now that we have a lot of programs right now that involve renewable energy. And so the program right now that our business program folks are spending a lot of time on is REAP. And those are projects that are intended to increase sustainability of energy at businesses. So historically, that program's been around a while, but historically we've done a lot of, changing out refrigeration systems at local grocery stores to something that's more energy efficient. Now we're doing a lot of rooftop solar, small scale wind, projects that help individual businesses. Generally, individual businesses provide sustainable energy for their operation. And that can make all the difference in the world. If you're a rural grocery store and you spend $1,000 a month on utilities and you can generate energy through a sustainable project like solar, that can have a huge impact on your bottom line. So we're doing hundreds of those. And I don't know why this is to main businesses, but that's okay. All right. So here's just a little bit about investment dollars. This is coming out of a database, and if you want some more specific information, I'm happy to share that. In 2023, again, we're still putting numbers together for fiscal year 2024 that just ended the other day. We're all taking a breather after that, and after finally getting a continuing resolution so that we can operate here and at least until December. In 2023, USDA Rural Development invested $235 million in Kansas. That was more than 1,000 projects. When you look at that number, a good number of those projects are single-family housing, which are the smaller projects. A handful of those would be the larger ones. Among those that would have been included in that number in fiscal year 2023 are huge projects, including and it's split over fiscal years, but we have been working on a $130 million hospital in Colby, which is obviously, I mean, it's a substantial project in Kansas. Among those investments, we've made about a little over 50 million in socially vulnerable communities in Kansas. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, you can follow up with me. But our goals are the goals of the administration. And so we are working carefully to make investments that, enhance sustainability, sustainable energy, that help socially vulnerable communities and distressed communities. So as we move forward, again, I work for the Biden-Harris administration, and our priorities at rural development are their priorities. So everything that we fund is through that screen. Here are just a list. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is just some of our programs in business and cooperative, because I know a lot of you are probably in that environment. So you're working with businesses. I know we have some chamber folks on board. We have loan guarantees. We do have a program called Rural Business Development Grants. I will say historically, so we grew out of all of the farm assistance programs. Most of what USDA does, including rural development, is financing or guaranteed financing. So we're kind of a bank. We have had, though, grant money in the past, and we have had some discretion in Kansas on that, related to that grant money. However, that's changed a little bit. If you're interested mostly in grants, it's kind of a tough time for us. We're getting less and less grant money, in part because earmarks are back. And when a lot of our grant money is allocated for congressionally directed spending, meaning earmarks that are projects identified by elected officials, which can be great. We have been able to fund some great projects through that program, but it just means that our competitive grant money is very, very limited. And then I mentioned, value added producer grant. That's a program that's been pretty popular. That's where, you grow strawberries, and, you've been shipping these strawberries to other manufacturers, and then you decide, hey, we're going to turn our strawberries into strawberry jam. That allows you to create a value added product, and we have funding for that. And then I mentioned Rural Energy for America program. This is just, rural energy program for rural communities. It's for rural businesses, but also ag-related businesses that aren't necessarily in rural areas. What happens with that program is that we have agreements with K-State and Wichita State for technical assistance. They can go out and do energy audits for a business to identify kind of how much energy you're using now. They can project any energy cost savings and also just energy savings if you're to do specific projects like changing out lighting, changing your HVAC systems, that sort of thing. And then we have funding for that. We have grant money and lending for that program, and we have a lot of it through the Inflation Reduction Act money. In the past, that program, we've only awarded those projects once a year, and we have a lot through the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we have gone to quarterly awards. We are managing hundreds of these projects right now with a staff of about 2 to 3 people. So that gives you kind of an idea of the volume that we're dealing with the number of folks that we have. And I guess I'll just say that when you think about that, try to be patient with our staff. So that's just really the basics of what we do. I know that there are folks on the line that have questions about specific projects. I'm happy to answer them or point you in the right direction. I do want to share with everyone here. I'm gonna just a second. There we go. Stop the share so that you can see my face. I do want to share a couple things before we open it up to Q&A. I want to give you the names of some human beings that can help you with these particular programs. And Jill, I see your hand up at just a moment. If you are interested in our housing programs, the person that you need to contact is Tracy McCubbin, Tracy McCubbin, McCubbin. And she is our housing director. She's in our Hayes office. Her email is tracy.mccubbin@usda.gov. If you're interested in our business programs, the human being that you can contact, and again, you can call, but email is probably a good way to start, is David Kramer. He is our business programs director, and he is based in our Topeka office, but works all over the state. It's david.kramer, Kramer, @usda.gov. If you're interested in our community programs or WEP, which is water and environmental programs, then your contact is Mike Pan. And his email is pan .chun @usda.gov. I just know it's helpful. Honestly, I don't need to be your main contact if you have questions that are specific to each of these areas of programs, and you're gonna get more informed answers and probably quicker responses from those folks than you are from me. So just wanted to share that.
Christy, may I interrupt you a second? I'm putting in
Yes.
that information you just gave me. I'm unclear about Mike Penn. He's both water and environmental and community, right?
Yeah, he is our community programs director. So he does community facilities as well as water and environmental programs.
But I did miss his email address.
Okay, it's so his name is Chun Pan, but everybody calls him Mike.
Okay.
It's CHUN.PAN@USDA.gov.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry if I flipped it around.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Jill's got her hand up. Jill.
Hi, the contact information that you've given for Mike or for Kramer at the business contact, that would be the best person for the intermediary lending program, it sounds like, to maybe ask some more detailed questions.
Correct.
Okay.
David Kramer.
Okay. And I guess just for folks that are on this call, I'm most curious about if others have looked at that program, and if they are, who are the applicants, who are some of the folks that are being considered to be the applicants for that program, because somebody needs to be the keeper of those loans. And I understand that the most logical entity to keep those loans would be like a bank or I'm not sure. I just want to share that I've been approached, the county administrator's office has been approached as being a potential applicant, or to consider being a potential applicant to support some of our community housing needs in partnership with community developers. So that's
Jill,
where my head's
I'm
at.
going to add in the chat, I'm going to put a link to our intermediary program just so that folks know what we're talking about. I put that in there. There are quarterly deadlines for that. So we just had one at the end of the fiscal year. The next deadline is December 31. So it's a competitive like funding competition, but the program, just for folks who don't know, it provides 1% low interest loans to local lenders or intermediaries that then can re-lend to businesses to improve economic conditions in rural communities. So you can be an intermediary lender if you're a rural co-op, a public entity, like a local government, federally recognized tribe, nonprofit, cooperative, and then that sets you up to be an intermediary lender. It's very similar to, well, not very similar, but it's similar to what, if some of you may be familiar with Red Leg, which is a program that we have where electric co-ops have a role as an intermediary. But I just provided a link to everyone in the chat so that you would know what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And what I'm just struggling with, I don't necessarily know that the county is the right fit to be. We could certainly serve as one of those intermediary agencies, but I was most curious, like if there's other communities in Kansas that are looking at this program and how they're thinking of structuring it. And I can drop my email in the chat as well if anybody is having similar conversations, and if we want to like compare notes. It's always helpful for me to look to what peer communities are doing in the state. So thanks for the time.
You bet. So yeah, are you looking at establishing a revolving loan program? Is that kind of what you're?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, just to have a way for our community developers, nonprofit developers to be able to easily have access to cash to acquire land to meet our community development, our community housing needs.
Okay. And Jill, what community are you with?
Douglas County in Lawrence.
Got it. And that, I mean, that's a challenge too. So I get asked all the time, what's the definition of rural, right? Your rural development, what's the definition of rural? And the answer is, of course, there's no clear definition because this is the federal government and we don't make it that simple. There are different definitions of rural depending on the program that you're applying for. So that's why I gave you the names of human beings, because if you can give those folks specifics about what you're trying to do, they can help you navigate the bureaucratic gymnastics of it. Because some of our programs, we have programs for, that are special to the smallest communities, 2,500 or fewer. And then we have programs that define rural as 20,000. Some programs define rural as 50,000, which is almost every community in the state. So part of it depends on where you're working in Douglas County as to what programs, you qualify for. But I know regardless of what some folks think, there are rural areas in Douglas County. I worked in rural Willow Springs Township a couple of years ago on a project. And so there are areas that certainly will qualify, but it really depends on what you're wanting to do.
Yep. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for joining us.
For those who may have missed it, and don't know how, I've put a message in there about how to save the chat so that you can save those names, or you can watch the recording again. Any other questions?
Hey, Christy, this is Ian Hutchinson in Sterling again.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. And so I think you may have answered my question. And while you're doing your presentation, I was looking on the website of Rural Development to learn a little bit more. But I'll just sort of introduce the project and dilemma that we have in Sterling that I learned that there might be grants from the USDA for. But we have a business expansion that's going to happen. They're going to build a company that's headquartered here in Sterling is going to build a new manufacturing facility. It's going to be pretty big, bigger than many of the operations we have going on here. $105 million facility, 250 jobs. Yeah, so pretty large. And so as part of the development agreement for that project, the city is responsible for the infrastructure improvements needed.
Right.
And our current problem is the water that will need to be brought to that facility specifically for fire suppression, because the flow requirement, not to get too in the weeds, but the flow requirements are just so high. And our water tower is on the south of town. This development is on the very north side of town.
Got it.
So the original estimate that we had for the water improvements is just very low, and it's really going to probably be a multi-million-dollar project.
When did you have the original estimate?
That was done probably about a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's just an ever-changing environment, isn't it?
Yeah, and they just sort of underestimated this fire suppression issue. So, I mean, we're currently looking at like a new water tower out there, basically. And so there's a guy sort of on the team who's friendly with some state legislators and whatnot. And so he was talking to them about some grant programs. And so the USDA Rural Development Grant came up.
Yep.
And I was looking on the website, there's water and environmental programs.
Yes. So Mike Pan is your new best friend.
Yes.
Reach out to him. The biggest challenge that I see, Ian, is that again, we have good deals on financing, right? We're able to extend, out to 40 years, and we have low interest rates. Check that out. We have fewer and fewer grant funds, just for a long list of reasons. So that's the challenge. And I know it's tough even for communities to, even if they have grant money, to come up with matches. If you are able, here's another thought. I don't know if you've looked into any of the bipartisan infrastructure funding in Kansas. If the funding is coming from, if you're able to find federal funding from the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, then the Build Kansas Fund helps provide a match for that. So I don't know if you have reached out to those folks.
Haven't yet.
You will, I will give you a very specific name. If you'll put your email in the chat, I will put you in direct contact with somebody who can talk to you about that, because they can talk to you about lots of different other sources. But Mike Pan can help you too if you go with the WEP program as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll write that down, and I put my email in the chat. So I'll look forward to that.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Christy.
Thanks,
Are
Ian.
you thinking of Matt Hansen or Matt Voles? I can put that in there for him. Who were you going to referring to?
Oh, Jen Colton.
Jen Colton. Okay, I'll put Jen Colton in there then.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, that'll save. Yep. Thank you. That'll save a step. So Jen Colton is one of the contacts for the infrastructure hub. But if you talk to her about your project, she can tell you kind of what might be available from a bill standpoint, and then give you some information about what the match might be as far as Build Kansas. So for those of you who don't know, the legislature set aside some of the ARPA money to be a match for projects that are funded through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so in Kansas, I mean, the challenge always is with federal money, especially grant money in Kansas, is that, you can have all the grant money in the world, but if you're in a community that can't match it, you're up a creek. So the idea behind this program was to set money aside for Kansas communities so the ones who need it most could take full advantage of the programs. So they have some match money out there. Thanks, Nancy, and Ryan too. Thanks, Ryan. Go Harvey County.
That's right.
All right. Anybody else have a particular project that they're...
Oh, I see that Grace has asked, are there any specific programs for senior living facilities in rural Kansas, like assisted living?
Yes. Our community facilities program certainly would be a program that's eligible for assisted living. Or senior living. It really depends on the structure of the facility. I know in rural Kansas, most of them are not for profit, right? Rural Kansas and business is an interesting combination of words, but what community, I don't know if I know we have the question from Grace, but Grace, maybe you could tell me a little bit more about your project or your community.
Sure. Thank you, Christy. Let me put my face on here.
Howdy.
Hi. Sorry, I'm having quite a morning, but I'm listening to you. So pretty much a background, and I reached out, and thank you so much for this platform, is for, it's actually in Seneca, Kansas, which is about 2,000 population. The facility is already set and built for assisted living. It's good to go. I was just wondering what funding is available. You mentioned about some loans that that they could provide. I just don't know what specific programs will be helpful to kind of help get that started. It is actually a need in that area. We've done a little research, and the building is already set to go for that type of
Is it a
business.
nonprofit or is it a
For profit.
for-profit model? Okay, for-profit model. Okay, then David Kramer, who is our business programs director, is a great one to talk to.
Okay.
He could, if you spell out exactly what you're looking at, he can point you in the right direction. But it would be business programs, and certainly Seneca is the size of community that's the perfect fit for our programs.
Okay.
Help
Well,
you?
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, someone
Okay.
asked a question about childcare centers, and it's one of my favorite topics, so I have to jump on that one. I'm a working mom in a community that doesn't have childcare, so this is a topic that's of interest to me. Our community facilities program does apply to rural childcares, but I will say that historically, it's been a challenge for Kansas childcares to make the models work. Here's why. If it was easy and these things made money, the private sector probably would have done it a long time ago. And it's really hard for our programs, though, to work on childcare centers, because oftentimes we're dealing with new facilities and communities that haven't had childcare before. And as I mentioned before, many of our programs are finance programs, and so we're leveraging financing for these projects. It's really tough to leverage financing if you're a new organization and you don't have any assets. What collateral do you have? I will say that the one program that we have been able to use for childcare centers is our community facilities program. It's worked better in other states than in Kansas because, again, in other states, there's already a market. They've established these things. We're starting from scratch in a lot of these communities. And so that creates some challenges. Oftentimes when, recently a community contacted me and we met with them, it was a community that it was a little too big for community facilities. That program has a population limit of 20,000 and fewer. It was a community that was a little over 20,000. So we weren't able to help them, even though they had a great project. But we weren't able to help them with our funding, but the way we were able to help them was through some connections and networking. In that instance, I was able to call the state fire marshal and say, hey, they're just waiting on an inspection. Let's get this done. And so we were able to help with that. And then also connect them with a foundation that was funding projects similar to what they were doing. And that has been helpful. So even if we don't have a particular fit, we can help direct you in the right direction. I also want to add that childcare is a huge priority of the current administration. And I attended a couple of weeks ago a White House forum on rural childcare, and it was fascinating. There was a group of us. I was the only USDA state director there, which means if this work continues, I think I'll get to play a leadership role in this effort, which is good. But it's clear that, they understand this is a priority. They understand that there are some changes that need to happen. I'm hosting a similar forum, a small group of experts in Kansas here at the end of October. And what I'm going to ask them to do is look at our programs and tell us why, they're not working to help facilitate more childcare, which we know a little bit, but why they're not helping and how they can be changed to help. I think one thing that could make a huge difference is just one little mention in the Farm Bill about childcare. It's never been mentioned in the Farm Bill. Big focus in the Farm Bill is production ag, but as you all know, there's a title for rural development. One mention could make all the difference in the world because it makes it a priority for funding. So it's something that we're working on. We work really closely with Department of Commerce, the Office of Rural Prosperity, the Children's Cabinet, and other folks who are working on childcare. This is something that's a huge interest of mine, and I think USDA rural development should be part of the solution. We're not yet, but I mean, we have programs with community facilities. We have done some projects, but not enough, and there are structural reasons for that we're working on. Regina, what community are you in? Okay, I don't know if she heard my question, but
Hope, Kansas.
Hope, Kansas. All right, so pretty small community. Is that Dickinson County?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've been to Hope. It's a pretty small community. So do you have childcare already, or are you starting from scratch?
I think they have a new Lions.
Oh, great. All right. Nonprofit opened in 2023. I'm going to share in the chat. We have a new, as part of that White House forum that I attended a couple weeks ago, we produced a new guide. It's a combination of a couple federal agencies that includes USDA, but it's a guide for childcare centers. Since you have one that opened in April 2023, that's good because it will identify some of the other programs like SNAP, some of the other programs that you can take advantage of through USDA programs that may or may not be rural development. So I will share that in the chat. And then someone else had a question about fire trucks.
Yeah.
Yes, we fund fire trucks, ambulances, all kinds of emergency management equipment all the time. So that would be through community programs, and Mike Pan is your contact there.
I don't think I knew that. I'll have to share that in my documents for grant writing.
Yeah, and I will also say that we have had an opportunity to partner on some of those with some of the foundations. You may have seen recently the Patterson Foundation put out like an RFP or a notice of funding available. I'm not sure what they call them, but specifically for emergency management equipment, including fire trucks and ambulances. And I'm not sure if that has closed out, but the Patterson Foundation is a great source as far as foundation funding for this type of project. And I know that we've partnered with them as far as emergency management equipment. They're great. If you're in Northwest Kansas, of course, Hanson, I mean, I think everybody's familiar with that. Hanson Foundation has done some of that as well.
Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Oh, due October 10th. Sorry, Ryan, I just gave you some competition there, I think. All right, I'm pulling up the PDF so that I can share it in the chat for our childcare guide. Happy to answer.
These are really, really great questions, and it sparks other people's questions. So you're helping everybody when you ask questions.
Yep. I'm having some internet issues, but I will this chat continue when this call is over, Nancy, or what's the best way?
It won't. But if you want to send it to me, I can put it out to those 1,600 people.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to get the link to pull up, but we've had some network issues this week. So
yeah, actually that might be a really good thing to do, is put it out to the whole network. This will reach 50 people who are on right now, but otherwise we'll get it out to 1,600 people.
Great. And Marianne, I see your post. Thank you. Yeah, that may be someone we want to include in we're trying to have a small forum of, like 10 experts we're going to have here at the end of the month. This is not an open invitation. It's like very, very specific experts, so that because Kansans can lead the way. You may or may not know this, but there's a lot of Kansans in leadership in Washington, D.C., at USDA and other federal agencies. And we're out there problem solving all day long. We're not afraid of big challenging issues. Hence our state motto. And
Yes.
But when I had an opportunity to attend that childcare forum, I thought this is, we can affect change as far as public policy. Our childcare issues are very different than, rural California or rural, even rural Virginia. We're just in a different situation than a lot of the other communities that take advantage of rural development programs nationwide. And it's important that we have a say because our communities need it most. Okay, Shanna has a question about housing funding.
Yeah, hi, I'm in Potawatomi County, and we are we had a project launch recently that was very interesting. A developer bought an old hospital, kind of a historic building,
Yep.
and then stacked a few programs to be able to make the numbers work. So like Kansas Housing Resources Corporation was a partner. He used moderate income housing grant. He used Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credit, and he used historical tax credits.
Yes.
So that was amazing. We want to do more of those, and we have a couple more ideas in the hopper. The issue and kind of the question I have for you is that it is a for-profit business.
Yep.
So
actually, I think I know the developer, but go ahead. Yeah.
okay. Tyler Holloman.
I do. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's
cool.
done quite a bit of the projects in the historic tax credit space.
Yeah.
Great.
Is there anything in the USDA realm of things that can help?
Yes.
Additional
I'm not
different
sure how many
projects?
units he's creating, and the truth is, if he's already doing, moderate income, so there's already some income restrictions. Depending on the number of units and the income situation of the folks who will be renting, again, I don't think they're going to have any problem filling the space. But one of the things that we are working on right now at USDA Rural Development is historically, we have had a lot of multifamily housing, and rental assistance has been tied to a particular property. We're working to decouple that. So there may be an opportunity, especially in the future, to have folks in rural communities who qualify for rental assistance, and that rental assistance can help them with a property that's not a USDA multifamily housing property. So that's something that they should look at. Just as an aside, I have worked with Tyler, and they're working on a project in my own community. I wrote the legislation for the Kansas Rehab Tax Credit Program, so I'm very familiar with it. It's been a huge, huge boon. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I think in the past, I think there was this belief that, it's a lot of hoops, like all government programs. One of the reasons that developers are paying really close attention to rural communities right now is that a couple of years ago, this was before my time at USDA, but I worked on an advocacy project. We increased the state rehab tax credit program for communities of 9,500 or fewer. And we increased that tax credit from 25% to 40% for those smallest communities. And so that's part of why your developers are taking an interest in your communities now. And that was the intent, right? I'm pretty proud of that work. The state rehab tax credit that we created 20 years ago now is transferable. So most people don't have a huge state income tax liability, but let's say you do $1 million project, in your community, which doesn't take much to do these days. You would qualify for a state rehab tax credit of $400,000. If you don't have that kind of liability, which most people don't, you can transfer that. So you can buy and sell the credits. You might sell it for $370,000 or something, and that money can go back into the project. So it's a great program. It's just gotten better for smaller communities. It wasn't working so well. The reason we changed it was it wasn't working well in the smallest communities because the projects weren't big enough to generate enough tax credits to get interest among buyers. And so that change has been huge. And hopefully you're not the only community taking advantage of that. But they have a project going on right now in my town, in Cottonwood Falls, a couple blocks from my house, on a building that I helped save. So it's a great project. If you have historic buildings in your community, man, great assets. Upper story development too, that qualifies for rehab tax credits. We are working, our programs have been pretty segregated, right? We have housing here and business here. We're working to make sure that we can address those multi-use type projects where there's a business on the ground floor and housing upstairs. So yes, I would look at that, rental assistance as one opportunity. And there may be others. We can do some infrastructure. We can help fund some infrastructure type work. Even things like, sidewalks, and I'm guessing that they're, having to do some infrastructure upgrades on that project. So I would start with Tracy McCubbin on that one.
Okay.
But yeah, great project. So you're in Pot County. Are you where are you? Westmoreland, Wamego, where are you?
Yeah, Wamego is where I
Wamego.
live and where our office is at. But yeah,
Great.
we're the entire Potawatomi County.
Great. And what's the population of Wamego?
Wamego is about 4,800.
Yeah, so you are right in the sweet spot for that increased rehab tax credit, which is why you have interest, right? Which is why
Right.
people are showing an interest in those historic buildings in particular.
Yeah. I wish we had a
Right.
few more historic buildings.
Right? Well, gosh, we tore a bunch of them down, but the ones
Yeah.
you've got, hang on to, because
Yeah.
they're ripe for redevelopment.
Yeah, and we're looking throughout the county too, not just in Wamego. We're working on buildings, or we're working on talking about projects in other parts of the county too.
Great. Shanna, do you know Brenda Spencer?
I think I met her.
She's somebody you need to know. She's been in the historic, she was a past state Main Street director.
Okay.
She lives in Pot County, and
I think I met her last
address
week
is
at the-
Onega. You need to get to
Okay.
know her because she could be very helpful to you.
Okay, yeah, I think I met her at the Potawatomi County or the Save Westmoreland's courthouse.
Yes, she's been involved in that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll reach out to her.
Yep. Great.
Thank you.
I love this. It's all about people and connecting and knowing who knows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's right there in your county. Huge asset.
Yeah. All right. I haven't seen anything else. So as I say, this will be posted probably, I'm going to promise Tuesday. It might be as soon as Monday because our webmaster is working on other things today. But and with the thought that we're done with questions, Christy, I learned stuff, and I'm going to try. I think I'm going to put all of those emails into the follow-up constant contact because I just think
Great.
that's incredibly helpful.
Well, and you feel free to email me, but the reason I give you information about, these are folks who work in these specific areas every day, and you're going to get a quicker response. I mean, I love chatting and helping rural Kansas, and feel free to reach out. But if you need something quick, reach out to the specific program areas.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So thank you so much. It was hugely helpful, and I hope everybody will tell Christy what they learned today that was most helpful, because that helps us know what's not getting out there, what's new, what's interesting to you. We have Kate. I'm going to make a few announcements. We have a remote work Wednesday that's similar to this. That is the opportunity to hear about other people who are working remote. It's the second Wednesday of every month, so next Wednesday. The topic is working remotely for an entirely remote company. The speaker is Katie Wagner from Enriched Agriculture. Then the K-State Research and Extension workshops, grant workshops still continue. We have one in Wyandotte County this week, Tuesday, and we're extending the deadline if you'd like to join us there. I put the tiny URL in there for that workshop. And if you're not in Wyandotte County, maybe you'd like to join us at the grant writing online workshops, and those are listed in the ksrelearn.com email. If you have an event you'd like to promote to the whole state, I do reserve the right to say whether or not that's applicable, but send me an email at KSRECV. That goes to everybody, and we'll, if you have a question about anything that has to do with K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality, why you can get your answer from that. And if you'd like to promote these events in your social media, we put out a little graphic every month. And if you have a newsletter or a Facebook page or anything like that, send me an email at that same KSRECV, and we'll get you in line to help you inform others in your area. The next call next month is the Elizabeth Berger from the Sunflower Foundation and Mike Scanlon from Osawatomie are going to talk about the economic impact of trails, which is information we've all been interested in. Our thought for the day is the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. That's Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and especially Christy. Thanks for all the good information.